Or make it the G8 again. What did you make of that, Malcolm?
Well, I make of it what we've suspected all along on these low 23 months since we found out the Trump campaign may have been involved with Russia. Donald Trump is seemingly in debt, a horrible debt to Vladimir Putin. And we don't know what it is yet, but you can be pretty sure that he is doing Russia's bidding at every turn. And to make the call to bring in Russia after it invaded a nation, seized its territory, and was put out of the G7, for him to say, hey, Russia should be in this club. Well, you know, Ambassador Mike McFaul, former ambassador to Russia, put it succinctly, that Russia does not want to be in this club. Russia doesn't believe in these clubs. Russia is trying to break up these clubs. And Donald Trump is the hammer that Russia is using to destroy the G7. Trump wants to be an isolationist. The United States is not really going to be involved in this thing. You see, he just doesn't take it seriously. And he goes around and insults all the allies. Lo, these 74 years after the invasion of Europe, which created the greatest alliance of power in the world. Russia and Donald Trump wants to see those alliances destroyed.
Yeah, and Sarah, you know, it was odd to hear Donald Trump, you know, offering without anyone knowing he was going to do it, that he would love to see Russia back in. The one ally that has seemed to forge something of a bond with Donald Trump has been Emmanuel Macron of France. And even he has had some pretty harsh words for the American president, tweeting this on Thursday: the American president may not mind being isolated, but neither do we mind signing a 6-country agreement if need be, because these 6 countries represent values. They represent an economic market which has the weight of history behind it, and which now has a true which is now a true international force. I mean, we're talking about a potential realignment of the West without the United States, and with Donald Trump continuing to sing the praises of Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Macron's initial diplomatic moves towards Trump had nothing to do with a positive evaluation of Trump's character, but, you know, seeing the danger, trying to smooth it over, trying to see if he could appeal to Trump's ego and avoid this kind of situation. But this is pre-planned. I mean, Trump's moves on this are extremely predictable. He has always hated these kind of alliances where they're NATO, the EU, NAFTA. He's always looked for an isolationist position for the United States, especially on trade, but on other issues, shortly after he returned from his first trip to the Soviet Union in July 1987. And so I think now, you know, Europe is trying to protect itself. It's trying to protect itself from Russia, which is trying to intervene in their election, which you've seen intervention in Brexit, in France's own election. And it's trying to protect itself, and this is the unbelievable part, from the United States. We are a superpower, or we're a superpower. And when you have people like Trump in charge, a kleptocrat, an aspiring autocrat, you will end up possibly with a super autocracy aligned with other autocracies across the world.
And you know, that we talked about this last week, David Korn. We kind of posited, you know, what would it look like, a world in which there is a sort of fundamental realignment, that the traditional Western allies are no longer the allies that, you know, they were before. You know, you had Donald Trump accusing Canada of burning down the White House in the War of 1812. Canada didn't even become a country until 1867. They certainly did not burn down the White House. It was British troops that did that in 1814. But I mean, that's where we are now. Donald Trump alienating our closest allies and saying Russia should be, you know, right with the world again.
Well, apparently people are talking about what Canada did in 1812. I mean, it's clear a couple of things. He doesn't want a G7. He wants a G2. I really think, or maybe a G3. Him, Putin, President of China, throw in Kim Jong-un. That seems to be who he's gravitating towards these gigantic autocracies. And John Harwood's piece this morning is great. I commend it to people. I would go a step further though and say it's important to remember it wasn't just Russian intervention in the election. It was information warfare against the United States, mounted by Putin directly. And Malcolm's talked a lot about this. And just this past week, at a conference in Europe, Dan Coates, who is the director of national intelligence appointed by Donald Trump, said that Russian measures against the United States, active measures, secret measures against the United States, are still going on. So while the top intelligence official in Trump's own administration says Russia is still trying to find ways to attack us like it did in 2016, he's out there trying to get Russia into a club that Russia doesn't even want to join. I mean, I don't want to sound too dire, but I don't think we can get much more dire on this particular issue than we are at the moment.
Yeah, and you know, John, you know, and again, I do highly recommend people read your piece, but this idea of a realignment, you know, David has said maybe it's a G3. It could be still 7, but it seems to be Donald Trump, Duterte of the Philippines. He seems to admire Kim Jong-un. He wants to meet with perhaps Erdogan of Turkey. He seems to admire China's now president for life, Xi Jinping, the Saudis, and UAE. And now you have in Italy, you have the new Italian prime minister, who is another person of the quite far right, breaks with the rest of the EU and backs Donald Trump's call to readmit Russia to the group of 8. So there does seem to be a realignment, but there at least is one European country that seems to be on Trump's side.
Well, I will say I think there was a subsequent clarification from the Italian delegation that he meant readmit after they meet their obligations under the Minsk Accords, which is concerning their behavior post the seizure of Crimea. So I think they clarified that they want Russia to mend its ways in terms of what it had done in Ukraine and Crimea. Look, the division of Western allies is something that I think Russia wants to do, that Donald Trump is helping them do. I don't think in the end it will be successful, because I don't think that, in fact, Americans and the American political system writ large wants to go in that direction. But it's going in that direction right now, and we'll see what happens in midterm elections. We'll see what happens when Bob Mueller lays down his findings and how Republicans react to that. But it does feel as if we are hurtling toward a moment of decision for the country on exactly what is the country willing to accept? What direction do we want to take? Which side is Donald Trump on? And that will be clarified soon.
Sarah Kinsey, I'm going to go to you then. You wrote a book, View from Flyover Country. You know, there is a sense that, at least in part of the Republican base, there is an openness to this kind of a realignment in the world, right?
I mean, possibly. I think that most people are more concerned with, you know, day-to-day needs and kind of getting by than they are with this realignment. I think that, you know, Trump has done so many horrible things on a domestic level, or just shocking things on an international level, that this is just one of them. You know, what I see in Missouri, which of course voted for Trump, is a lot of disillusionment, a lot of frustration. I think if people want to take a pragmatic approach to the midterms, we need to anticipate that they may not be fair and free.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. Donald Trump is now taking the podium, and we'll let you finish when he is done talking. And I think he's going to take questions as well. Let's listen in.